Yo guys, what is up? Welcome to Quora with JC. Today's episode 6. We're gonna look at some more Quora questions. So there was a little delay recently in my production. This is because one of my cats really died and I still look quite rough from it. In fact, when I was printing the photos, I made a small mistake and I printed it on a A4 piece of paper instead. So there it is. So in memory of Chio. It's very sad. It was very sudden because she was just 8 years old, and yeah, it's just I don't know what to say. And there are kind of two categories of people here. I just want to quickly go over it. There are people who say, well, pets are pets. So pets are just pets, so not very important. But usually, for other people, they are members of the family. So they get sick, they die, etc. It's a big deal. It's not just nothing. So yeah. So I've been feeling a bit rough, and it's really hard to get back into the game. But obviously, I'm doing my best today, and next week I'll try to do even better. So yeah, let's get to the questions. We have a lot to cover today. Okay, so today's questions appear a bit difficult, and of course I will point out which ones are not. The first question is, why is Russia's COVID-19 vaccine, I'm guessing we're talking about Sputnik 5, so much better than China's? So I actually have no idea about this question whatsoever. I don't know about the Chinese vaccine at all. My guess is that a lot of people are kind of making fun of China. And, it's made in China, so it can't be good. And of course, there was this whole anti-political movement against China, and that plays a role, Of course, yeah, there is actually also a lot of anti-Russian hatred as well. But China is kind of blamed for, even though that still requires evidence, actually, but China is blamed for the origin of coronavirus. And so, just by association, everything that China makes right now is bad. So, and of course, you probably heard about the rocket thing as well. Recently, they launched a rocket, and one of the components is spinning out of control, and it's gonna crash. It's expected to crash May 8th to 10th. If you again read the comments to that rocket video, a lot of especially Japanese people are going there. The nationalists, and they're like, oh, made in China, ha 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 ha. That's the mentality of people today. And also, just to touch upon Japan, it's very ironic that these people kind of behave so high and mighty when in Japan, for example, the response to coronavirus has been a disaster so far. I mean, Japan aspires to be like the US and, like England, etc., France, perhaps, to a certain extent. They aspire to be at that level, but in reality, the real level is more closer to, the Philippines and Myanmar, when it comes to coronavirus, at least. So that's just embarrassing. That should be embarrassing. And also, coming back to the rocket for a second, well, I think in the late 90s, there was a Ariane 5 rocket that exploded because of a coding error during launch. And of course, we know about SpaceX rockets as well. They also, crashed and burned sometimes. So just to kind of exclude the Chinese situation, the Chinese are not good. The Chinese rockets program is decent. It's decent. That's all you can say about it. It's not great, but it's not bad. It does what it's supposed to do, So, okay, that's enough about the rocket. But in the Russia vaccine, I'm not sure why or if it's even better, because I haven't seen any evidence, so I can't make my decision. Okay, the next one here, and I'm not sure why I see this, because I'm not subscribed to any Star Wars pages or anything like that. So the question is, which one was worse, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, or Episode 8, The Last Jedi? And in the response here, somebody says The Last Jedi by far, because The Phantom Menace has its problems, but it did give us cool new characters, fantastic designs, and overall enhanced the lore as a whole. So in my view, I can't even comment on that whatsoever, because I have one thing in common between episode 8 and 1 and 8, is that I haven't seen either of them. So I can't comment at all. That's the thing. I know that a lot of people make fun of episode 1, and episode 8 just sounded like a train wreck from what I hear in the comments, or in the reviews, I should say. But you see, this question actually, for me, this is absolutely irrelevant. That's the thing. I'm covering it to show you how this is irrelevant. And out of all the questions that I've done so far on this show, like about coronavirus, about Japan, about America, kind of cultural questions, etc., this question is gonna gather the most emotions, gonna gather the most comments by far, because this is nonsense. And as a society right now, we've normalized nonsense. We've normalized mediocrity. All of that has become normalized in our society. So people argue about, Star Wars, and they argue about sports very emotionally. And every day there's like thousands of comments about, oh my, what did this coach say? What did this player say? And it's just nonsense. It's nonsense. Who cares? It's all nonsense. So yeah. At one point I wanted to watch the original trilogy, like episode 1, 2, and 3, but I just never got around to doing it. And when it comes to the newer ones, the only one I've seen from the new ones is episode 8, and I thought it was technically okay, but the story was just a complete copy, like almost complete plagiarization of episode 4, 5, and 6. Okay, the next question is 3 of 7 from G7 have developed vaccines. Japan, France, Italy, and Canada have all failed to develop any. Russia and China have been successful in marketing their vaccines. Why? Yeah, well, I can only speak about the Japanese situation, and there was a recent article, just like yesterday, by the Washington Post. And look, I know it's the Washington Post. We know who owns it, and so we know, the angle of attack from that outlet. But, okay, I think it made a kind of fair summary about Japan. So basically what happened is Japan doesn't really have a history of developing vaccines. It's not really known for that. So suddenly you try to do that now, but you need a certain amount of experience for scientists to be able to develop vaccines. And if they don't have that experience, they have to relearn that right now in a very short amount of time, and that proves very difficult. The other thing I want to say here is Bill Gates, man. What the hell is with that? What is with Bill Gates? Why are we getting our health advice from Bill Gates? That's just like ridiculous. That guy is a computer nerd. And yes, I know he has investments everywhere. But this is just saying like, okay, if I buy stock in Tesla, for example, now I'm a specialist in electric vehicles. That's not like that at all. I just bought some property basically. I don't know anything about it though. And with Bill Gates, like recently he's been in the news because he basically because right now they're talking about the vaccine. And so there are factories in Africa, in Asia, that are ready to develop the vaccines. What they're missing is the formula to the vaccine. And guess what? So Bill Gates comes in and he tells all these countries, no, you're not going to do that because we have the patent. We have the patent. That's all. And we're not going to give it to you. We're not going to sell it to you because if we do, we're not going to make money. And it's all about money. Greed is good, baby. That's how we roll in the States, man. So, yeah, well, first of all, that we're getting health advice from Bill Gates, that's laughable. And then, of course, the matter that he's blocking the process, even though he's not a qualified expert on the question. He's, for some reason, the authority now to block the patents being sold around the world, which is absolutely ridiculous. And man, like, there should be some fallout from that, but unfortunately I feel there's going to be none, because rich people live in their own world and they get away with murder these days. So I don't think anything's going to happen to the guy, unfortunately. Okay, next question. What do the Japanese think of the woke culture in the West? So first of all, let me just define very quickly what is the woke culture. And recently it means basically being alert to injustice in society, and especially racism, which is a good thing. But look, I mean, in my case, before the woke thing became mainstream, I was already thinking like that. And then I look at all those people now who say like, oh, I'm woke. Like, where were you in the past decades? Where were you? Where your hand was buried under the sand. That's where it was. And you didn't pay attention to the issues. Yeah. So there's a book, it's called Dark Money: The Hidden History of the Billionaires Behind the Rise of the Radical Right. And it's by Jane Mayer. Apparently it's a very good book. I haven't read it personally, but it goes into detail about the past decades and how especially, you know, the people on the right have been very actively funding certain like programs for institutional repression. So you might say, well, it's not only the right doing that, and you're absolutely correct. It's not only the right doing that. Unfortunately, well, in the States, do we have a left? Do we really have a left? I mean, all these like AOC and Ilhan Omar, etc., they say that they're on the left, but the recent evidence, especially AOC, points in the opposite. It points in the direction of corporate Democrats. So just because they labeled themselves, you know, Justice Democrat, but in reality they are just corporate Democrats. And you know, you should be protesting against Nancy Pelosi, for example, but instead what do? You call her Mama Bear, etc., etc. You know, the whole thing about forcing a vote on Medicare, that was just ridiculous. I mean, they didn't even do that. They didn't even fight for it. And you know, the $15 minimum wage, etc. They don't fight for it. They don't fight for it because at the end of the day, whether they really believe in it or not, that's very questionable. Definitely Biden doesn't believe in it enough to fight. I know he did it for federal workers, but you know, a lot of people who are struggling in the economy right now, they're not federal workers. They work for like, you know, fast food chains and whatnot, and for them a $15 would be a huge deal. So we're not going to see that. So when it comes to Japan, though, I think Japan in general has been moving at a snail's pace. And the Japanese don't think anything about the woke culture in the West because, again, this is not like, it's not a thing. You see, like I said, in my case, I was already behaving like that. I'm against racism and against injustices in society before the whole woke thing became mainstream. That's the point. You have to pay attention in life. You can't just, I'm sorry, but it's not good enough to just live your life until you're 40 and then suddenly realize that there are fundamental issues with society. This is not good enough. You missed the boat, man. So yeah, you have to be aware in life. You have to be aware of what's going on around you. You don't live in a vacuum. Now, some people really do live like they're in a vacuum, which is very strange, very strange. But it is not the way that life should work. So in Japan, we don't even talk about the woke culture. It's just, yes, there are people who are, you know, for gay marriage. Some of them want to, like, you know, push the marijuana thing, etc., etc. So, yeah, we don't call ourselves woke, though. We just call ourselves progressive. That's all. Okay, last question for today. Are these health experts preparing Italy and most of Europe for a mostly permanent lockdown? What is the need of occasional reopening charades or talking the game up with words like road to normality, etc.? That's a good question. That's what I'm wondering as well. I hear those kind of sentences a lot lately. But basically, it goes back to I think this is to blame on social media, because in social media, what you have is hashtags. And so people go from one hashtag to another. And that's how they're able to kind of catch up on the issues or show outrage or show some appreciation, etc. But yeah, these are all just words. It's every time we have a space mission or a war, we always have to name it. This has been kind of I don't know why they do that. We could just say, okay, this is war number 255 or whatever, but no, we have to call it Operation Desert Storm. We've been doing that for a long time. And with space, it's the same thing. Actually, when you watch a rocket launch, in the initial launch, they say, like, they do the countdown and then lift off, and then they say something like, I don't know what you would say, like recently maybe the what is it, the opportunity, like shining light in the mysteries of the universe or something like that. They have to say it. It's absolutely unnecessary. It doesn't add anything to anything, actually. It's just words. They might as well just not say them, but they do. And I think this is all there is there. This is the same thing here. But I don't think Europe is going to go into a lockdown as a whole. I think certain countries will from time to time still. This is because the vaccine rollout in certain places has been awful. So in the UK, this was already many weeks ago. I read that about 50% of the country was vaccinated, but that was weeks ago. So maybe by now, they are probably like 70 to 80% vaccinated. And you can see in the numbers actually that the rate of infection is really, really low now. It's doing well. In England seems to be doing well. But yeah, it's just political buzzwords, these type of things like road to normality, etc. It's just buzzwords. So people have to navigate to some kind of hope these days. And they go from hashtag to hashtag, or they go from buzzword to buzzword. Okay, that's all for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I gave you some nice, interesting answers to think about. And I will see you next week. Bye bye.